My answer is going to be moderately offensive. An atheist is someone who professes not to know God, and I would focus on the profess. And to Omar's great credit, actually, and to Wade too, I've discussed a little bit about this, and I told them, look, if I really am going to say I believe in Scripture, and I'm going to read Romans 1, I'm going to read Romans 1, 18 through 25, and it's going to tell me that it's clear from the things that have been made, God's eternal power, his invisible attributes, so that all men, all women under the sun are without excuse. If that's true, then I don't have to claim to know the state of affairs in anyone's given heart. I just can say there's suppression going on. But suppression can lead to self-deception. Now I sound like Yoda. It leads to suffering. But as I've tried to explain that theological viewpoint to Omar, he said, so you're telling me that I sort of believe in God, but that a lot of times I don't because I'm sort of pushing it down, but then it sort of pops back up, and other times I sort of do. Something like that. We had a conversation one, and I said, yeah, I think something like that. And I basically just said, I'm not trying to do it in a mean, nasty way. And online he'll say, well, that's not Vocab's fault that he believes that. He just has a faulty source that he's looking to for his information. And so and Wade and I have had similar conversations about that. But see, one last thing. I don't believe it's proper for Christians to look out at the world and necessarily say, here's an atheist, here's a Muslim, here's a Jehovah's Witness, here's Joe. Scripture doesn't group people like that. It talks about those who are in Adam, that's all humanity, and those who are not only in the first Adam, but those who are in the last Adam, who is Christ. And so, really, it's more of a simple bifurcation, and that's why I said it could be moderately offensive, but I want to be frank. And to their credit, again, they've allowed me to be frank and not just been so disgusted we're able to be friends. In fact, I just brought this, I got to say it, Omar gave me a book recently. He knows like Transformers, bought me The Vault, which is a really cool Transformers book.
That's embarrassing that you brought that.
I had to sneak it in
embarrassing
somewhere.
For you, not for me.
Oh, embarrassing for me. Totally out of context, I know, but I'm just trying to prove that he really has tolerated my intolerance there.
All right, a two-part question. Wade, maybe I'll ask you to comment. Omar gave a brief definition on what it means to be an atheist, dealing with the supernatural or lack thereof. Would you add anything to that, or is that a good summary for you as well?
I would say I don't have a belief in the supernatural. I suppose I'm open to evidence, but quite simply, as far as atheism is concerned, it's simply a lack of belief in a theistic God, a personal, all-powerful God. That doesn't mean that an atheist can prove the non-existence of such a God, unless you can turn over every rock in the universe, looking for such a God. It isn't provable. Although I know that there are plenty of Christians who believe they have plenty of evidence for it. And since I firmly believe it's not provable, what I've done is just I don't comport my life in such a way, that there is one. I don't hold the Bible as an authority, although I appreciate many parts of it. That's basically it. It's a non-belief. It's although a lot of atheists make various ideologies of it, it's not. In fact, in some of the original questions, I believe it was, how are you friends with someone who has the opposite belief? And it's kind of a false dichotomy. It's not even a matter of opposites. One is a belief in a specific thing. One is a non-belief, period. And that's it. But we believe in plenty of other things.
Okay, Omar or Wade, Vocab made the comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, that an atheist is someone who professes not to know God. Is that how you said it?
Yes.
Either one of you, would you respond to that definition?
I don't like it. I think it's
rude.
No, it's not rude.
Presumptuous.
No, I don't think it's presumptuous.
Omar, would you answer the question that I asked?
I'm trying. I just think it's wrong. you have to take my word for it. I don't consciously or unconsciously, as far as I can tell, have a belief that I'm trying to deny. For a long time, I had a belief, and then I had a long time of doubt when I was trying to suppress my doubt, and it was very difficult for me. It was a really hard time in my life. And at the end of it, when I was really honest about what I was feeling, and I admitted to myself that I didn't have that belief, it was actually very relieving to me. And I honestly wish it would be great if I had that kind of assurance that I had when I was a believer. It gave me a lot of satisfaction. I felt very certain about many things, and I don't have that. I have to decide how to live my life based on something else. So we had this conversation, Vocab and I, and I've had it with many Christians, and maybe he may never believe that I don't really believe in God, but I don't know what I can do about that. I know what I believe and what I don't believe, and that's all I can say. I can't say what he thinks or what anyone thinks.
So, Vocab, Omar has said that there was a time when you were a professing Christian. Is that accurate, Omar?
Well, I consider myself a Christian. I know that Vocab may not have considered me a Christian, but
well,
yes.
then maybe let me broaden the question out. Vocab, how would you respond to someone like Omar, or a broader question, who was a Christian or was a professing Christian and now no longer is? Were they Christians? What happened?
Yeah, they're. See, and okay, I just want to say everything as good as I can, and this is why it's cool. Like when I say dumb stuff to Omar, which I've said dumb stuff to him, he accepts my apology and vice versa. And I don't think I've had to apologize to Wade yet, but I'm sure I will, and hopefully he accepts it. And I think that is key, to be able to be offended or sort of annoyed and be able to be okay. But with that being said, two things. Omar was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I would consider that body, that group, that organization to be heterodox to the point of being unorthodox to the point of being non-Christian. Primarily because there's a multiplicity of gods. They have gods progressing, and you have someone at the center that I would view as a false prophet. So it's different than someone who's a Pentecostal and saying, well, we're different, versus those who are LDS. That'd be the first thing. The second thing is, my theology doesn't allow me to say that a person can actually be a Christian. I don't mean sociologically, I don't mean professing, I mean actually be reborn in their heart and then be unreborn. I've mentioned adoption earlier. When the God adopts us in, he doesn't unadopt us. He doesn't kick us out. And he holds us in. John 6 talks about this. And so when I go and I see places like 1 John 2:19, it says they went out from us because they were never really among us. It doesn't mean sociologically or grouping together. It means never had the experience of new birth. Because once a person is given a heart of clay that used to have a heart of stone, God doesn't reverse that process. So I would ultimately be saying, someone that says they were a former Christian of any type, I don't know what's going on at that moment. They might be sort of in a backwards spiral. But if they really are his, he doesn't let them go. I hope that made sense and worked. Did that, people? Did you understand that? Okay.
All right, and so Wade, would you like to weigh in on Vocab's broader response to saying that a former Christian, or an apostate Christian, if I can use that language, was never really a true Christian? That was Vocab's response. Do you have a comment? And then Omar after that.
I don't think that there's an objective measure for being able to tell, apart from someone who ever really had that experience never strays away, or God doesn't let them go. If that's the only indicator that you've got, then I don't think that you've got a good indicator. apart from that, the only other thing that you have, obviously, is our word, and you know that our profession as friends, that we were there and then we weren't. It's circular. It's kind of a tautology, and I think it's fine for believers, but it's one of those things that non-believers, especially apostates, find, you know, if anything is annoying, and I forgive you in advance, by the way.
Awesome.
If anything is annoying, it's the kind of condescension that's implied with that. You know, I've been told everything from, well, then you never were a believer, to, well, you can never be unsaved. Of course you're still saved. When in fact, I know, you know, for me, the whole thing became a non-issue. I don't know that I'd go so far as to say disrespectful in all cases, but it's another instance of what sometimes sounds like not even trying to reach out, especially if you've never been in that position, from having been there to here, if that makes sense.
I would go to the next question, but Omar, if you wanted to comment, since Vocab talked about you, go ahead.
I think it's a perfect example of the no true Scotsman fallacy, and Vocab knows what that is. That, well, you can look it up. You can Wikipedia that.
Omar has taught me 2 or 3 different fallacies. He even taught me one that apparently was invented by C.S. Lewis. What was that one called? Do you remember? Something-ism, Bulverism, or what?
Bulverism.
Yeah, apparently C.S. Lewis coined that one. So yeah, a wise man seeks knowledge, and that's why we're friends, because I seek knowledge.
Well, so then my follow-up question to Vocab at this point is, I think as we can see, the audience, that there are some pretty sharp differences between the three of you. Why do you want to be friends? Why is this friendship worth it in the midst of these sharp differences?
Again, I can't help but be theological, if that's the right way to say it. Omar and Wade, and I mean this, I hope I mean this in all sincerity, are beautiful. They are made in the image of God. They display forth His wisdom in various ways. They display forth His artistry. They display forth His creativity. Omar does some really cool creative things I could never dream of doing. They display forth there's all types of ways that it is so clear they are made in the image of God. So there's a natural enjoyment that comes out of that. That is one reason. There's a natural just enjoyment about being friends with them, as I see the image of God image forth in them. And I think that's true, and that's okay. And ultimately, I do hope that everything I do is unto the glory of God. So I hope I'm a model of Christ as much as I can be in their lives. It's tough because Omar is really generous. We go out for coffee, he buys me coffee. We go out for drinks after a Daniel Dennett presentation, and he buys me my Red Bull. He just
gives you wings.
You what? Oh, gave me wings? Yeah. No, but seriously, I mean, he's generous. He sort of shares. I watched his house for a couple days. Just watched his cats. They gave me like a $25 Starbucks card. I really didn't deserve it. But I mean, all I did was go in and feed the cats and stare at his books. Seriously. But I want my relationship in whatever way with Omar and Wade to be God-honoring, and whatever that looks like, and I hope that it is.
Wade, let me ask you to take this question. Do you actively seek out friendships, or should you, with people who are not atheist, who have a theistic view?
Sure. Not necessarily because they're theists, but because they're people. Part of that, I mean, one of the places we do start, is with like-mindedness. If we can talk at length or deeply about, things that we have similar views on.
So let me just follow up for either Omar, you can take this. When you have a friendship with, in your case, with a Christian, Omar, do you have an end goal in mind? How do you handle the goal perhaps of changing their mind, or is that a goal of yours?
That's not a goal of mine. I don't have an objective with my friendships. I enjoy vocab. I have other Christian friends and friends of all sorts of different schools of thought, and they're just people that I enjoy. I'm not trying. I really don't want to necessarily persuade anyone. I want to have an honest conversation, and I want my mistakes to be pointed out to me. Vocab is very good at it, and he loves to do it, I think, and I'm glad he does it. And that's why we're friends. He has taught me a lot about my own views and being able to have friendly conversations with people. When we first started interacting, I think I probably was more antagonistic, and we would talk online, and he said, why do you respond this way? Why are you being aggressive or combative? And he was right. I had a chip on my shoulder, and I really went out of my way to try not to be that way. And it's because of him. It's because he pointed it out to me. And maybe it's because he wants me to go to heaven with him, or maybe it's just because he's a cool guy. But either way, I'm really grateful for that. So I don't have anything. I'm not trying to prove anything with my friends or my friendships. I just enjoy my friends. And
so Omar, follow up for you, and then Vocab respond with the same question. But you do think that Christians are fundamentally in error, and Christians think atheists are fundamentally in error. Assuming that's true, that you do think Christians, how is it then that you don't have an end goal in mind?
Well, I think that homeopaths are fundamentally in error, and conspiracy theorists are fundamentally in error. I think that we can be mistaken about a lot of things. I think that we can be mistaken about our own preconceptions. It's just a basic fact of psychology that we're very good at deceiving ourselves, and we're very bad at seeing how we have deceived ourselves. So I know that I have my own psychological flaws as well, and does that mean I'm fundamentally in error? Maybe it does, but I try to look past people's flaws, and I know I have many, so I'm grateful when people can see past mine.
Okay.
Yeah, just to testify what Omar said, when we started interacting online after we had met in person, we were talking about different things, and I said online something like, Omar, why so much invective? And he's like, do you even know what the word invective means?
What a
and then
jerk.
when I saw him in person on Mill Avenue, I said, Omar, why the aggression? And at first he was like, I thought you could handle it. But then I turned around briefly and talked to someone else. And when I turned around about 20 seconds later to Omar, he's like, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I was being a jerk. And I was like, and then right when we were talking, I feel like that was like a hinge, a turning point in our relationship. I was like, whoa, this guy's totally different. He apologized to me on the street. This is crazy. It started raining. And I had been dropped off of Mill Avenue that day. I was like, Omar, it's starting to rain. Do you mind giving me a ride home? So he gave me a ride home. So, I mean, this is sort of, I don't know, the beginning of a beautiful friendship, I think. But
I love you, Vocab.
Oh, man, yeah. I love you, too. Buy atheist flowers. That's how to be friends with him. No, but, I mean, I think I stated my sort of end goals previously. I think I hope it was adequate previously. I just wanted to tell an anecdote instead.
Wade, why don't you take the discussion a little bit further, and if you want to comment on either Vocab or Omar's comments, that's great. But my question is there any danger that friendships between atheists and Christians could be detrimental to either party? And if so, what would be your concern?
I have this sense that the dangers perceived more from the Christian side. I don't think I know that we all have a tendency to be fundamentally biased. And I don't mean biased in the prejudicial sense, but I mean in the psychological sense. So more than self-deceptive, you know, we perceive reality very often in a kind of a skewed way, and it guides our beliefs. So there's a danger from all over the place, not just from Christians or you know, any other theistic group. I don't personally see a danger. You know, I see my relationships with Christians and anybody else I have is more or less fulfilling. But Christians can speak to the other side of that.
All right, Vocab, would you?
The real danger I see for the Christian is sort of different than what you might think. It's the Christian becoming complacent. So, you know, this is my friend, I enjoy them. Let's just not talk about this other stuff because we might fight, we might argue, they might not like me. To me, actually, the real danger is the sort of complacency that we can go into, which to me ultimately would demonstrate a lack of caring. Because it's inconvenient to bring the things up. But that's the beautiful thing about Omar and Wade. They don't say, hey, we can be friends, we can, you know, talk about Star Trek together. That's more Wade. I like Star Wars more, but we can still sort of talk about Star Trek together, Wade and I. But just don't, you know, don't bring up any your God stuff and we can be friends. They don't do that. If they did, I think we would hang out less. I think our relationship would be more shallow. But to me, the real danger is the Christian becoming complacent and lackadaisical in the friendship.
So you're saying that you want to talk about significant issues.
Yes.
Omar, if you had a Christian friend who didn't want to talk about significant issues, would that impact your friendship with them?
If they didn't want to talk about God?
Right. If they just said, I don't want to hear from you and
No,
I won't.
I'm probably most of my friendships, including with atheists, I don't talk about God. It's not. I'm interested in a lot of things. I happen to be interested in religion. That's sort of the main bond that I have with Vocab. But I'm interested in a lot of other things, and none of my friendships, I would say, are based only on one interest. I would think those would be really uninteresting friendships if that were the case. So, what was the question?
I was just trying to get at whether or not talking about significant issues, not necessarily God, but Vocab seemed to be saying that one of the reasons he enjoys his friendship with the two of you is because you do have the ability to talk about significant issues.
Oh, well, yeah, and I have plenty of Christian friends, religious friends who know my viewpoints and they have no interest in discussing them with me, and that's fine. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I don't think friends do that. Go out of their way to hurt one another. I do appreciate being challenged. Not everybody does, and if your friend doesn't want to be challenged, then being a good friend means you probably shouldn't challenge them, I would say. And Vocab might disagree with that.
Bob, I'm sorry, can I interject something here?
You can wade in.
I can. Thank you.
Sorry,
Vocab. I'll wade in. Nobody has ever. Back to, you know, the danger issue. A question I'd have for Vocab is Vocab, what is the danger? What happens to Christians when they become complacent in their friendships with non-Christians?
Oh, wait, okay. Yeah.
Why is complacency problematic?
Because ultimately I would say it demonstrates a lack of love. If you're no longer concerned, if you no longer care, and just sort of enjoy having, well, I'll say a more shallow or superficial friendship, then do you really believe what you believe? If I really believe men and women by virtue of sin are under the wrath of God, how can I not care about those who are? It just seems inconsistent. So that's mainly what I mean. To me, that's a bigger concern than other considerations that we might have. Because I want Christians to be challenged in their beliefs and have good talking partners like you guys. I mean, it's just a sad thing it's sad when Christians aren't willing to go deep. And I'm not saying I'm there, I always do that, but they need to be willing to have the atheist say, give me one good reason why, or they need to be okay with that and ready to roll. But I think complacency is a danger because it shows a lack of concern and a lack of an eternal perspective. Does that help?
No.
No?
No.
Omar, can you help me translate what I'm trying to say? Bob, can you help me I don't know what else to say.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, I understand why that would be, as a Christian, that would be something that would concern you. It's just not something that I have to deal with, I guess.
Right.
Would you be concerned that someone might lose their faith and move away from their faith in their community, in their complacency?
If that happens, it would go back to what we talked about earlier. I think atheists can be effective. This is going to sound so calloused. I just don't know any other way to do it. Just take my word that I'm generally an okay person or something like that. Atheists are effective at flicking off the fence-sitters that are not legitimately his sheep. And that is okay with me. Because at least then we know who's who. I'm sorry for my callousness. But you guys are like, you can be effective snipers, assassins, picking off the weak of the herd, right? Something like that.
It's funny you say that because that was, I think I'd heard something along those lines from you a long time back, a while back, with regard to
debates?
The effectiveness of debates.
Yeah.
That, it's not necessarily so much about getting the right perspective out there as it is bumping the fence setters.
Partially. Like, I'm just saying...
If nothing else.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, it's naive to be like... it's naive to think that here's professing Christian X, here's atheist Y, they're friends. It's naive to think, as that happens millions of times over, that professing Christian X becomes like atheist Y. That's gonna happen. That's a reality. And I'm not saying that's what we want the end goal to be, but I'm saying I understand, respect, and accept that. So I don't think the Christian needs to be scared. If the Christian is scared of being friends with the atheist or someone like them, then they need to shore up. They need to shore up what they believe. We shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't have fear of being challenged. We should be okay to say, I don't know. Like I talked to you about physics. I don't claim to be like, well, I just put on my listening hat and I say, Wade, tell me about physics because I got a lot to learn. With Omar...
And I get all enthusiastic and nerdy and ridiculous.
When the physics conversation the other day, yeah, and that's all right. So it's insecurity and a lack of sort of putting in due diligence that would make the Christian be frightened of those end results. And I don't think we should have that.
Vocab, would Jesus be a friend with an atheist? And then...
While we were yet sinners, Christ showed his love to us by dying for us. That's Romans 5. Jesus was accused during his day in the first century in Palestine of being demon-possessed for being friends with so many naughty people. I'm not saying, you guys, you're not a tax collector, are you? Neither of you? I don't think they are. I know Wade used to work for the government. That's all right. Not a tax collector, not a publican. But Jesus was friends with those folks, and that was bad back then. So my point is, yes, he would be a friend to atheists, and guess what? And it sounds cheesy, but he is a friend to atheists, even now.
Omar, how would you handle that question?
Would Jesus be friends with atheists?
Yes.
When I think of Jesus, I think he was a righteous dude. And I think he would be friends with atheists. Based on my understanding of him, he was friends with all kinds of unsavory people. Because those are the interesting people. Sometimes. So, yeah, I think so.
Wade?
Yes, I believe he would be. Sorry, I don't have a more in-depth answer than that.
It's all right.
I agree, though, yes.
Wade, continue on then. We're coming to the end. We're going to go to questions in a few minutes, but I thought it'd be good to give each one of you just a short summary, just a couple of minutes each at the most. What else you want to say to the audience or to the other two panel members?
I think what I would say, does anybody mind if I throw a quotation out there from like Martin Buber?
Do it, homie.
Right on. And would one of you read it for me, please? All right, thank you. Martin Buber. And this is from, I'll just give a brief background on it. In 1923, Martin Buber, who was a friend of Zionism, he wrote much of the history of Hasidic Judaism, would have been considered a Jewish mystic, an intellectual born in Austria, 1876, died in 1975. He had an experience, a very transformative experience, roughly around the time of World War I, that kind of defined his sense of responsibility to his fellow man. And he went on to write a book called I and Thou, and published it in 1923. And this is a piece from it. It's a little arcane, it's a little old-fashioned in the way it sounds, but I think it's particularly beautiful as far as friendship and relation is concerned.
I and thou take their stand not merely in relation, but also in the give and take of talk. Here, what confronts us has blossomed into the full reality of the thou. Here alone, then, in human friendship, as reality that cannot be lost, are gazing and being gazed upon, knowing and being known, loving and being loved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Omar, final thoughts?
Oh.
Or, I'm sorry, Wade, did you want to continue to add to that?
No, I apart from that, I think it's in relation, you know, whether we're Christians or non-Christians or non-theists, that's at the bottom of it. That's the most important thing, is our human connection. And though many of us won't see that as necessarily divine and profound, I personally see it that way. And it fills up that space, you know, that might have once been the Christian part of me, and it's a good thing.
I have a quotation from Frank Clark. I don't have any biographical information about Frank Clark. I just like this quotation. He said, "We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't." And ultimately, that's what everybody needs, is friends that comfort them and friends that force them to grow. And I hope we can all have friends like that. That's what it's all about, I think. That's it.
Thank you. Vocab.
Let me close with one more anecdote, which is the night I debated Omar in Tempe on a Friday night, and then he had already invited me to a party the next day at his friend's house on a Saturday. So we debated each other for 2.5 hours on Friday night, and then Saturday we were hanging out at a friend's house, which was pretty surreal, pretty cool, and it was just so funny because a lot of people in the party were like, "Hey Omar, you know, how'd your debate thing go?" Da, da. And he's like, "Well, the guy's right here," and it's just like, this is strange. But I love that experience, and I think that's a good way, a good snapshot of what these relationships can be like. And it's gonna take some love on both sides. And so you guys ended with a quotation. If I may end with a quotation from 1 Corinthians 13 about what's gonna make this really work. And again, I know it sounds like a Hallmark card, but it's the Bible, so it's not a Hallmark card. 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. Then skipping down to verse 13. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. And that's what's going to be the glue to make this stuff work.